Zoom. All right. Hello, everyone. I think we are ready to get started. Thank you for joining us tonight. We are going to have so much fun. We have Ashlyn Brennan with us, who is a physical therapist here at the Child Development Center, and she has so much energy. I see her doing therapy with the kids during the day, and I'm like, man, she gets a workout every 30 minutes. So she has lots of energy and will have lots of great things to share with you tonight. If you are joining us on Zoom and you would like stars, you need stars hours or need this for credit for stars, please be sure to put your name, full name in the chat and your stars number. I will also put my email address in the chat, and if you want to email me your stars information, that will work as well. So I think with that, we will go ahead and get started.
Okay, thanks, Jan. So like Jan said, my name is Ashlyn Brennan. I'm one of the physical therapists here at the CDC and see kiddos through our early intervention program and in the clinic. So I get to work with little ones from 0 to 21. So it's ever changing. Jan is right. I get quite the workout. So it's 6:30. Hopefully I still have that energy to push through this next hour. What we will be doing today is going over a general timeline of gross motor milestones from ages 0 to 5. So it's during that peak time where we're really developing all those little gross motor skills that are going to help our kiddos when they go to school be able to participate on the playground with their peers and in PE. So we'll talk about all of those milestones, when they are generally met in age, and then kind of give you some ideas on how to promote those milestones at home, different activities you can do, games, different toys that will help promote that development. So we have holidays coming up. So sometimes my number one question I get during this time of the year is, what can I buy for my little one that will help promote their development? So we'll kind of go over that stuff, and then some red flags of those times when we should be concerned, and maybe it's a good time to get that evaluation done to see if there are any delays in that development of those gross motor skills. So I'm going to switch to share screen and start my presentation. And we will get going. Okay. So I already kind of went over our outline of what we're going to see. I apologize, there are not video examples. It's really hard to kind of bounce the videos on here. So we'll do a lot of talking. And if for any reason somebody needs me to demonstrate, please don't ask me to, but I will. So let's look at that first range of that birth to 2 months. So with these little ones, their biggest focus is head control at this point. We don't have a ton of those gross motor skills that we're working on early on, other than allowing them to be able to safely move their head in different positions, and then also so they can interact with their environment. So we're looking for these little ones to be lifting their head up off the floor when they're on their tummy. And like in this picture, it's really just turning their head directions. So at 2 months, we're not going to expect them to be up with their head scanning their environment, but we want to know that when they are in supervised tummy time, that they are able to lift their head and clear their airways. This is also a huge reason that the Back to Sleep campaign is a big deal, and we'll get to that in just a second with my next slide, is that this is difficult at this age. So it needs to be that supervised time of working on that tummy. Little ones at this age should be holding their head up momentarily when they're supported at the shoulders. So when you've kind of got, when you're holding them, when they're sitting on your lap and you've got a good support around them so they don't have to worry about their trunk or anything below, they should be able to hold their head up for short periods of time. It's okay to see bobbing at this age with their head, but what you don't want to see is that their head's just hanging down here and they can't get it up to scan their environment. So those are those big skills that we are working on. As far as those limbs go for 2 months and under, we just want to see them moving freely. So we want their arms moving around freely. We want them alternating those leg kicks. So you'll see them in that picture. You'll see that one leg comes up, the other one goes out. And a lot of times these little ones are just doing like little bicycle kicks. And those are great skills that we want to see at that 2-month age. So some activities to promote this. You probably have heard this a lot. Physical therapists just constantly are throwing it out there. Tummy time, tummy time, tummy time. So right from the beginning, I think it's a great idea to start supervised tummy time. Back to sleep is an important campaign. When our little ones are sleeping at night, they need to be on their back. There needs to be nothing in the crib. That way that we decrease that risk of SIDS because, like I said, they don't have that head control yet to be able to safely clear their airways if they're on their tummy. So during the day, supervised tummy time is the way to go. Little ones tend to not like it, in my opinion, if you start late. So starting younger is going to kind of promote that tolerance to being in that tummy time. And there are different ways to do it because being straight on the floor is hard. So there are some pictures on here of kiddos that have either a towel that's rolled up that's under their chest or those tummy time pillows that you can get that come with a lot of play sets. Those are awesome ways to kind of help them have a little bit of support so they can work on that head control. I've seen parents who have made wedges themselves. They're pretty easy to make if you get sometimes you can even just take like a binder and then put some fabric over it to make it a little more comfortable. And those, I love the aqua mats. You can find them on Amazon. I think they're like $15. The water mats, because they have some built up air that almost has like a built-in pillow in it. And then they get to sit there and play with that water and look at it. So those are just some good ways to promote tummy time. And there's another picture using your own body as support for them and laying. That's a just easy one to distract them because they get to look at your face while they're working on that tummy time. A goal for tummy time, you really want to work for 30 to 60 minutes a day. And that's total. So if your little one only tolerates being in tummy time for 5 minutes, that's okay. Just do a lot of little 5-minute exercises in tummy time throughout your day. So we will move on now to 3 to 6 months. So around, and I forgot to mention, so all these milestones, when we're talking about 3 to 6 months, that means that these are normal gross motor skills that a 6-month-old will be able to do. So with that being said, if you have a little one who is 6.5 months and they have not mastered one of these skills, that's okay. They have until 7 months to get that skill down for that range. And even beyond that, if they're a little behind, it's not it's not a red flag. So if we're hitting some of these skills, say pull to sit at 7.5 months, that's not super far behind. It's something that we want to watch, but we don't need to panic about that because this is a wide range and every kid is different and every kid is going to get different skills at different times. So we'll talk about that as we come up, but I wanted to explain what my little time frames are. So when we're looking at 3 to 6 months right now, we are looking at until they turn 7 months. These are kind of these skills that they should be working on. We are hoping at this point that our little ones are starting to lift their head and chest off the floor. So now we want to see them have more of that upright neck position where they're able to look up and scan their environment. We're looking for about 30 to 45 degrees of neck extension. And they're able to hold that for an extended period of time. So as long as they like playing in tummy time, if they're up and looking and watching toys, you know, there's 1-2 minutes that they can hold their head up. It's not those short increments like we saw when they were younger. And they're starting to push up and get their chest off the ground. And that's important skill to be working at this age so that we can give them those tools and work on that muscle strength for when they get ready to crawl in the next section. So we also start to see little ones rolling around this time. They typically roll from their tummy to their back first. And that's just because they're already working on that tummy time and they're pushing up, that it's pretty natural that if they're pushing up and they turn to look, they're going to roll back. And so a lot of times you see them accidentally rolling. It'll terrify them, but it's okay. They'll get used to that sensation of rolling. But you'll see that first most often. Some kids will do the reverse, but you're usually seeing that by 6 months. Working on pulling to sit. So if you have them laying on their back and you are pulling up at their hands, and they will start to sit up and get their head in front of their shoulders. So what you don't want to see, and they're going to do early on around 3 months, is when you go to pull, their head's going to be kind of hanging back and they don't have any control of it. As they get to be older in that 6-month range, they're going to start being able to have their head coming first in front of their shoulders with that motion. And then we're also working on that prop sitting. So you can see it in that picture there of that super cute little, well, I'm going to guess boy, but we don't know, boy or girl, that they're using their hands to push up and kind of maintain that sitting position with some support. We aren't going to see that independent sitting always before 6 months. That is a skill that comes a little later. If your kiddo's doing it sooner, that's great, but it's not really of concern until they're a little older to be sitting unsupported by themselves. So daily activities to promote these things, still tummy time. But now, while we're working on that tummy time, we kind of want to see them pushing up even more and looking at toys and interacting with toys. So before, when we're working on tummy time, we're just working on picking our head up and turning it. Now, if we have toys placed in front of them, you want something up there that they're looking at, that they might start trying to reach for, because that's going to be an upcoming skill. Anything that's going to keep their attention so that they're working more on that neck extension and interacting in tummy time than just being in tummy time trying to lift their head. And then sitting. So we love to push sitting around this time, and a lot of times that's in a supported position. So I've got some pictures on here of some different toys where you can get a play mat that has like a little piano table or any kind of, sometimes I even just use my own legs when they're sitting in my lap. Something that lets them work on a prop sit that's not all the way down to the ground. So you're giving them a little height and it makes it a little easier on them. Those pushing walk toys, I love them. They're fantastic at so many different ages, but this is a great age for sitting because it's the same. It's at an incline, so they can put their hands on it and play with the buttons, working on that prop sit. And using a boppy, anything that'll kind of help support them. That's kind of a higher level skill because that support is really low on the pelvis, but it gives them some opportunity to work those trunk muscles a little more, and so they can still play with a toy. So this is a pretty good segue about bumbos and bouncers. This is another PT pet peeve is that we see sometimes a lot of those containers, which are necessary. They are in ease and they allow for parents to get stuff done. Being a mom, I understand there are times where I really just needed my little one to sit still and be entertained while I did the dishes. But when it comes to those containers, we really want to be limiting the time that kiddos are spending in them to 30 minutes a day total. So small increments in which you're getting stuff done are going to be okay. you're going to use them, and that's okay. I used them as well, but it's really limiting how much time they're in it, because unfortunately those containers, when our kiddos don't have that sitting balance and that trunk strength yet, they end up in bad positions and they aren't using their muscles to build those strengthening, or to strengthen those muscles. So the bumbo seat, like this picture of the little guy in the green one, he is chillaxing in that seat and he is not turning on any trunk muscles. Versus in the picture below, you can see that little one has a little more upright posture. I also love that that picture has mom there, just because it's kind of promoting her to sit upright. But you really want to make sure that they're at a point where they have enough trunk control to kind of get that upright posture in that seat. And bouncers or exersausers, the little one on the top picture, in that one with the sun, she is having a blast, which is great, but you can see that she is leaning into the front. She's probably not really engaging those muscles. Sometimes what I like to do, if you're using one, is to use some towel rolls to give them some more support. That way that they don't have all this freedom when they don't have the muscle control to be able to hold themselves upright. If you kind of use some towels to tuck behind them, you're going to kind of give them that support so that they can work those muscles a little more. And the picture below, that little one is a little more upright. He can use his hands to push up and to interact with the toys. And I like that it has that lower level or the upper level for his feet, because another thing that sometimes we see is stuffing pillows or blankets underneath so that their feet can touch the ground. That's not a great supportive surface for them to work on that weight bearing. So we really want to make sure if they are in those seats that they have a nice solid surface to put their feet on so that they can work on that weight bearing. Some of them come with little adjusters to give them more height. Otherwise, I'm still kind of a big pusher on, if they can't touch their feet to the ground, they probably shouldn't be spending much time in it. So I just wanted to put that in there as a little blurb, that some of those containers are necessary at times, but really trying to limit 30 minutes a day that we're in them. Okay, so our next range is we're looking at that 6 to 9 month range. So this is when we start to see those skills develop that are the foundational skills in the last range. So we're going to start seeing little ones doing some independent sitting. So they're able to sit on the ground, play with toys freely with their hands, and they're not losing their balance often. They're going to start reaching on tummy time. So having toys out in front of them that they are having to reach and kind of weight bear onto one arm is a good activity, because that's going to be that precursor to crawling, is they're going to have to be on one arm while they're crawling. You're going to start to see little ones pivot on their tummy. And so that's the picture of the little one on the blue mat, is where they start kind of just pivoting, and you'll see them go in just a circle over and over again. And that's an awesome skill to promote, moving toys to kind of promote that pivoting, because it's a lot of that trunk strengthening, and it is another precursor to crawling. By this range, you should start to see them rolling from their back to their tummy. If you're very lucky, you've got a little one that is ready to be on their tummy because they want to crawl, and they'll do that often. Sometimes you have to really promote this one, because once they figure out how to get off their tummy, they don't want to get back on it. So you should start seeing them be able to get onto their tummy from their back by themselves in this range. You'll start to see some army crawling. Army crawling is going to be that belly crawling with their hands and legs. It's not always going to be coordinated right at first, but that's okay. But they're not getting up into that 4-point yet. That's not till later on. And then we also start to see that they're standing with support. So we have infants have a weight bearing reflex. So when they first are born, and within that first month, they'll weight bear on their legs. About 1 to 2 months, that reflex goes away, it integrates, and they're not going to weight bear like they did. So a lot of times parents will panic and they'll say, oh, they were standing on their legs and now they won't. That's not abnormal. We really don't see them start weight bearing and standing with that support until about 6 to 9 months is when they're going to be ready to start working on that activity again. So some activities, this is where that standing toy comes back in. This is a great time to bring it back out if you put it away after they were younger and start giving them a support system to stand on. Now, sometimes they try to stand on them and they like just go, and all of a sudden they have no idea how to get their feet there and they fall. So what I do like to do is sometimes I'll put ankle weights on them. If you have any kind of ankle weights that you can put around the legs, it's just going to weigh it down. That way that they have more stability to work on standing before they are ready to start walking. And also those infant tables, any kind of table that's at a lower height that they're not hanging onto up above them to stand up, but that they have to push up is going to really promote that progression towards that independent standing. And a great activity to do at this age at 6 to 9 months is tunnels. Kids love them. Some of what we sometimes see is kiddos that are starting to scoot on their bottom rather than crawl. And it is great that they have figured out a way to get themselves around. But there's a lot of benefit to crawling and to working on that reciprocal moving. Tunnels, it's really hard to scoot on your bottom through a tunnel. So it is my trick. If I have a bottom scooter, we will do a lot of tunnel work, and it really helps promote that crawling through. And if at this point, 6 to 9 months, they're doing that army crawl, that's okay. They're still going to be able to get through that tunnel, but it's also going to help progress them towards that crawling on all fours. So now we'll move to 9 to 12 months. So around this time, you might start to see them progressing to crawling on all fours. Any kind of crawling is beneficial. Army crawling, crawling on all fours with that reciprocal alternating pattern. Those are great skills to work on. It is also not abnormal if your little one goes from army crawling to walking. So don't panic if that happens. You definitely want to see some kind of crawling. Some kids might not crawl. We have early walkers, and to all those parents, God bless you, because that is a quick, a lot more work as soon as they start walking. So, but if we start to see around this 9 to 12 months, more of that crawling on all fours. You'll also start to see kiddos moving in and out of sitting independently. So they really start to nail those transitional skills. Before, you might see little ones move out of sitting onto their tummy, onto all fours, kind of uncoordinated, just falling. Well, you should start seeing at 9 to 12 months, we see those protective reflexes come. So we want to start to see them as they are transitioning, putting an arm out and catching themselves to stop. You're first going to see them doing it forward. Then they can do it side to side. Backwards comes last for those protective reflexes, but you should see them in a good control, purposefully moving out of sitting around this time. You will also see them starting to pull to stand at surfaces. Initially, they're going to be all arms. They're going to be yanking themselves up. Weird things are going to happen at their legs. That is normal. And eventually, as they get better at that skill, they're going to start pulling up, and they're going to go through a half kneel. So they're going to be bending a knee, getting a foot on the ground, and pushing up through that leg. So you start to see that towards the end of this range. Now that they're standing at those surfaces, you start to see them cruising. So they're going to start walking side to side along that surface. Most often, they are going to be both hands on the surface moving. And as they get better, they'll start rotating, kind of like you see that little one. He's starting to rotate a little bit towards mom. He still has both hands for support. But as they gain that strength in standing, you'll start to see them maybe trying to do it with one hand rather than two. And that's a great thing that you'll definitely see towards the end of this range. And you might also see them start working on standing alone. Now, with these activities, and I love that picture, by the way, of the little guy who is terrified that he's standing alone, but the majority of the time, that's how we get them to stand the first time is let them figure out once they're already doing it, what they're doing. So what you will see at this time is you're going to see some funky leg alignment. So they might have their toes turned way in. They might have their toes turned way out. They might be up on their toes when they're in standing. When we have new standers or new cruisers, it is normal for them to do some funny things with their feet. They are trying to figure out their stability. So we really don't start to worry about those alignment issues until they've lasted beyond a certain phase of a new skill. So when the tough part about that is that this is an age where they are gaining new skills pretty quickly. So if you saw them turning their feet out pretty drastically when they're standing at a surface and then they stopped, but then they start walking by themselves and they do it again, that's not abnormal. They're really trying to gain stability however they can. So I just want to emphasize that there will be some funny looking things. Give it time. I always love to remind parents, give them 3 to 6 months. 6 months is a long time, but if they're little minor alignment issues, it's okay to give more time. For those more drastic ones, at least give them 3 months. 3 months to work, because they haven't worked on standing, they haven't worked on walking or any of those weight bearing activities until just now. So those muscles, those joints, they have no idea where they are yet in space. Give them time to learn that. So a couple activities for this 9 to 12 month age. I love doing pillow climbing. I throw out pillows, stuffed animals, obstacles. Let your older toddlers leave a total mess in the living room and make your little ones crawl over. Because once they have mastered crawling and they're ready to start working on those standing, like I said, they haven't done a ton of leg strengthening besides that crawling. So if they have to start crawling over things, they're going to work those leg muscles even more and really work on that hip strengthening for that proximal strength. So we just want to make them crawl over pillows, crawl over your legs. If you have any kind of like foam play sets, just crawling upstairs, crawling all over the place, anything that has got them putting a little more oomph into a crawl is going to help their strengthening to get them ready for those standing and walking activities. And another one is start working on moving between support surfaces. They might not be ready to independently walk yet. If you're just starting to see them maybe attempt an independent stand, you really want to work on this progressive distancing of furniture. So in that top picture, that's kind of more a progression. The bottom picture has these 2 cubes. I love to use couches and ottomans. They're really easy because if you have both of those things, then you can use them. You can turn a laundry basket upside down and use that by your couch, but have them touching. Make it a corner so that they're working that cruising skill with some rotation to switch surfaces. And then just slowly, as they gain confidence, pull it back away. So on that top picture, you see it's just far enough out of reach that that little one has to reach with their hand, but there might be that brief moment of standing by themselves. So you're taking away that stability of the 2 surfaces being right next to each other. And then as they master that, pull it a little farther away. Make them actually take a step between the 2 surfaces. That's going to be that way to really start to promote that independent walking at this age. So that walks us into, no pun intended, 12 to 18 months. So this is our walking range. It is very wide. You know, there will be kiddos that might walk at 10 months. There are going to be kiddos that might walk at 19 months. That's not too far outside this range. And when it is this wide range, it's important to kind of give them some time to work towards this skill. We don't consider a big red flag is if you have a little one who's not walking by 2. That's the time that we definitely want to step in with some intervention, some assessment, and figure out what might be causing that. That 18 months to 24-month range, it's not ideal if they're not walking yet, but it's something we monitor and we might add intervention into. But it's important to remember that if your little one doesn't start walking till 18 months, that's normal. So it's such a wide range. I think sometimes it's hard to keep waiting and hit that 18 months and say, oh, they just started walking. Some kiddos are just going to walk a little later. So within this range, the skills we're going to see is that independent standing is going to get more mastered. They're going to start to be able to stand up from the ground without a support. So before you might see them let go of a support for independent standing, well, now you want to see them transitioning up into standing just from the middle of a room. You're going to start to see that independent walking. First, on some even surfaces, they're going to have a hard time with grass, with sand, with dirt, any of those things. And then you might start to see them walking on those uneven surfaces if they were an earlier walker. You're going to start seeing them crawling up and down stairs more independently. I think that this is a great skill. If they've started crawling in that earlier range, start working on it. But you want to start seeing them crawling up safely and crawling down backwards on their own at this age. And then they are going to start having some of those ball skills at this time. You want to see that they are rolling a ball back and forth. So they're also getting to start this back and forth play, and that opportunity to kind of build on that skill so that when they are getting older and with their peers, they can do that back and forth ball play. So right now at 12 to 18 months, you're just going to see them sitting on the ground, rolling it back and forth. So some activities around this age, I love those foam climbing sets. They're fantastic. There's inclines, there's declines, there's steps. They can climb, they can work on walking up inclines. New walkers, inclines are a great way to strengthen. Now, not everybody has the means. I don't have these at my house, so I kind of make them. Take couch cushions off of your couch. Find anything that you can make shift a little climbing set for your little one. And then I also take opportunities to find inclines wherever you can. With COVID-19 right now, we're not out as often as we want to be. But if you're out and going to the doctor's office and there's a ramp, have your little one walk up and down the ramp. It's such a great way to build some different leg muscles and challenge that balance while they're walking. Another toy that I like that I think promotes these skills at this age are those suction cups toys, the squigs. Anything that you can put on an upright mirror that they can work on standing at and playing with, those squigs are great because they have to pull them off and it changes their balance. They're going to have to adjust and correct for that change in their center of mass. And so it really starts to work on those balance skills in standing for that progression to where they're going to be able to handle those uneven surfaces better because they've learned those balance reactions. We have three main balance reactions. We use our ankles, we use our hips, and then we step. So those suction cup toys give them such a chance to work on those ankle and hip strategies in order to regain balance, because that stepping strategy is really like a last case scenario that they can step and catch themselves. But we want to build those other two strategies because that's a lot of that strengthening for walking on those uneven surfaces, because you're going to have to constantly be using those ankles and those hips to adjust to that. So this next range, we're going to start to go into years because we've kind of gotten through that big, heavy, gross motor skill achievement age up till 2. You're constantly getting skills, every few months. Now we start to see like a broader range on those skills. So those 2-year-olds, while they are 2 up until 3, we start to like to see them walking on those uneven surfaces. It's scary to let them do this, but have them work on walking on rocks. That's a great way to kind of implement this at home. Walking up and down stairs with assistance. So either holding a handrail, holding your hand, but actually walking up and down rather than crawling. Jumping down from a very low height. They might start jumping off the step holding your hand, and that's great, but you might start to see them doing like 1 or 2 inches. It's great to grab a book, some kind of hardback, like hardcover novel, and they can stand on it and practice jumping down. Because when it comes to jumping, the first skill we learn is jumping down. That's easier. Gravity helps us with that. Then we learn to start jumping up off the ground without having that gravity to assist. So you'll start seeing them jump up with 2 feet at the same time. Or like the little boy, which I'm sure all parents with little boys have experienced this, the crazy jumping on the bed. But you can see how his feet are coming up at the exact same time. So you really want to promote that 2-foot takeoff and landing rather than leading with 1 foot. We like to say here to keep our feet together. I've heard from our other PT to pretend like a pirate just tied your feet together and you have to hop along with them tied together. So anything you can do to promote that 2-foot takeoff rather than leading with 1. And then you're also going to start to see early throwing and catching skills. So with kiddos at this age, a nice softball, a beach ball, not too big, because if it's too big, they might get a little fearful of it coming at their face, but something that's soft that you can start those throwing and catching back and forth skills. They might not be super accurate with catching at this point. They're going to do a lot of kind of hugging it into their chest, but you want to start to promote that at this age. So some daily activities. I love trampolines. I think it's a safety thing at this time to keep in mind that those big trampolines are probably going to be a little too much for these little ones. Also, the amount of time spent on a trampoline. Those little enclosed trampolines, I have one in my basement. My 2-year-old loves it. She loves to jump in it. But you don't want them jumping aggressively for 2 hours a day because their bones are still molding. Their joints aren't necessarily prepared for that amount of jumping. But jumping on a trampoline is okay also at this age. I just prefer that it is in a safe environment and it is 1 kiddo on the trampoline at a time, preferably. When you add in a bunch of kids, that changes the dynamic. And then a lot of times that they don't have that strength and that muscle control to be able to adjust to another kid's jump changing the direction of the trampoline. So all those My First trampolines that are individual 1-person trampolines are a great opportunity for them to work on those jumping skills. And then bubbles. This is a fun age for bubbles, especially if it's nice out. If you're willing to do bubbles inside, that's even better. We want to work on those reaching overhead. If you're reaching overhead and they're trying to reach for bubbles, it kind of takes it's a dual task activity. All of a sudden they're focusing on that, but still having to balance in that standing position. So I love having them work on reaching overhead. If you do it in the grass, it's even a step up because they're on an uneven surface. You can start to work on them running after bubbles in the grass. So they start working on that skill. And also stomping bubbles. I think it's really good, especially for those kiddos that might have a little bit weaker legs at this age, is that stomping really promotes that hip and knee flexion to get their foot up and to stomp down on the bubble. And it's also promoting 1-legged balance. So those are 2 skills that are coming up in that 3-year-old range that you can start working on when you work on stomping on bubbles. So for 3-year-olds, we're going to start seeing them standing on 1 leg for a very short period of time, about 3 seconds. It's usually enough time to pick up their leg and kick a ball forward with some momentum. So you'll start seeing them kicking a ball forward about 6 feet in a straight path. Before, they might just be kind of walking into a ball, or they might be just giving it a little bit of power to get it maybe 3 feet forward. But here's where you want to see them starting that work on bringing their leg back and then kicking forward. And that's going to take some 1-legged balance. you will start watching them walk up and down stairs, alternating their feet with a handrail. I emphasize that, when we do some of our gross motor testing, we have them do it without the handrail to see if they can, but that's a safety thing. And I think it's good to promote using the handrail. If you have time and you want to do it without the handrail, you can have them hold a ball and walk up and down. It's a great way to distract their hands, but just make sure you're nearby, because if they're carrying something, it's going to make it a little tougher. But they'll alternate going up first. You really won't see that alternating coming down the steps until they're on that older end of 3 years old. And keep in mind, sometimes smaller kiddos aren't going to get there by 3. I have a little one that is small for her age, and she was a little later getting to this skill, but it was harder for her to alternate because she was smaller. So it's not abnormal if they're not alternating coming down by the end of 3, but you do kind of want to start promoting that. So keep that one kind of in the back of your head as maybe being a red flag. We're going to start to see them jumping over a line. So jumping over something and forwards, coordinating that movement. You're going to start seeing them jumping forwards about 2 feet, 24 inches. And then you'll start to see them jumping off a step by themselves, not having to hold on. Little ones at this age are also going to start throwing overhand and underhanded. So probably a distance of about 5 feet with that one hand. And you might start to see them kind of showing you signs of a preferred hand, but I think it's great at this age to promote them using both hands because they're just learning that overhead strength, and that is really going to help strengthen those shoulder girdles for overhead activities. So at 3, let's work both arms. I like to have them do both arms. They really don't have that preferred hand until they're closer to 4 or 5. But just start looking for those one-handed throws, just using both hands. And then they will start to hopefully ride a trike before they turn 4. So being able to get on and off of it by themselves is the first step to promote. So some activities here, we've got Simon Says. It's a fun activity. They like to kind of start promoting following directions, and you can start working on that one-legged balance. And animal jumps, so frog jumps, hopping like a bunny. Those are other great ways to promote that 2-foot takeoff and landing. Sometimes when you start jumping over hurdles, kiddos start leading with 1 foot because they're a little timid. So I will kind of revert them to a frog jump over the hurdle because it's really hard to frog jump with 1 foot leading. So 4-year-olds, we're going to start seeing them stand on their foot for longer, 1 foot. We're going to start seeing them stand up on their tiptoes without losing their balance. They're going to be jumping forward a farther distance, jumping onto a small step, and jumping over more of a hurdle, maybe like 2 to 4 inches. 4-year-olds are going to start being able to quickly stop or change directions with running. So you're going to see more of that stop and go. They're going to have those quicker reactions to stop their body and their momentum. When they're younger, they kind of just keep running because they've just figured out to get that flight phase where both feet are coming off the ground. They might start hopping on 1 foot. That's an late 4s. They might start hopping short little hops in place on 1 foot. They're going to be able to start walking backwards on a balance beam, galloping, and throwing balls at a target 5 feet away. So you start to see these school-based activities that you're going to have kiddos participating in PE. These are those foundational skills at 4. So some daily activities, we've got red light, green light as a stop-go, working on that momentum. Jumping over pool noodle hurdles, I love them. You can also cut a pool noodle in half and put it out as a balance beam. So now's the time. I'm pretty sure they're on clearance because we're going into winter. So get some pool noodles at your house. And animal walks. So at 4 is when we start working on that core strengthening. You're not going to see a 3-year-old do a sit up. They don't have the abdominal muscles developing yet to be able to do that. So at 4, we kind of want to start to promote that core strengthening because we are going in to 5-year-olds. And this is where we like to start seeing them work on being able to perform a sit up without rotating and pushing up off the ground. But you really don't see real true sit-ups until like late 5s. So keep that in mind. You're standing on feet 1 foot for longer, standing on pretty much, it's those same skills we've already had, but we have just started to do them longer and really master them. You'll start seeing them skip. They will mimic their movements that they see you do. And that's a helpful skill for those kindergarten kids because they're going to have to do a lot of mimicking in school. They'll start jumping sideways. They'll be able to jump up and spin around 180 degrees. They're going to kick balls farther, and they're also going to kick a moving ball. So they'll be able to like track a ball coming at them and kick it without losing their balance. So some daily activities, yoga, working on those practicing following somebody else's movements. There is a website. If you go look up Cosmic Kids, they have YouTube videos for all of the kids' favorite cartoons for yoga activities, and it's a lot of fun. And start working on those jump rope skills. First, having kiddos jumping over one that their friends are rotating, and then you can start to progress to them holding their own jump rope. So we're going to get into those red flags, and I talked a lot, so I'm running out of time. We'll go fairly quickly through these, but these are red flags for any age. And this is a big thing for parents to see as well as childcare providers, is that if you see these things happening at any age, it's probably a great idea to refer in order to have some further assessment or even a screening done to see where their skills are. So if there are strong parental concerns, I always think that is a red flag. If the parents are super concerned, there is no reason not to have an assessment done in order to kind of gauge where they are. Then any significant loss of skill. Kiddos gain skills. They might kind of struggle with them for a while and take a step back, but they should never be totally losing a skill. So if they have learned to walk and then a month after they've learned to walk, they stop walking and they can't do it, that's a red flag for some further screening and assessment. Any lack of response to sound or visual stimuli, differences in right or left-sided strength use. If you see little ones that are only kicking with one leg and the other leg just stays still, or are only reaching with one hand and are just leaving the other hand down at their side, we want to look into those asymmetries. And then anytime that tone, which is looking at our muscles are usually at rest. But if we have that low tone, so you see those kiddos that are just kind of laying there, they're not very active, they're not moving their arms and their legs, they've got that low tone, bad posture, those are some red flags. And then any high tone, which is when the kiddos are very stiff and tense, those muscles aren't relaxing, they're staying stiff a lot. That makes a lot of developmental skills difficult to do when their muscles are just always turned on. So those are some red flags for any age. I wanted to hit kind of on that 2 to 4 month range because we like to promote early intervention and getting kiddos started early if necessary in any lost gross or any delayed gross motor skills. So we're looking at those asymmetrical movements if they're only using one side of their body, if they don't have head control, if you're seeing a lot of head bobbing, they can't get their head up while they're on their tummy in this 2 to 4 month range. That is something we want to address because as they get bigger, those skills get harder. And we want to be able to kind of promote that development as their bodies are growing so that they're not playing catch up later on. And then any kind of flaccid low tone. So if they're not moving a lot, they're not actively kicking, actively reaching, moving their arms, that's something that we want to consider a red flag for those infants. There is a handout for any childcare providers. It is from the Queensland government. I am going to stop my share and share it with you really quickly before we go into questions. This handout, well, maybe I can get there. There we go. Is super helpful because it has on here at each range, 6, 9, 12 months, all these red flags of gross motor ideas of when you should be worried. Pretty much it is if we are 2 months past one of those developmental phases and they don't have that skill, that's a red flag. So that's kind of giving them some wiggle room to be a little delayed. But if you hit those, if you're 2 months behind and they have not gotten those skills down, that's probably a time that it's important to make that referral for a screening or assessment. So that is my presentation on gross motor skills, how to promote them, and those red flags. I'd like to open up for any questions, if there are any. You can type them in the chat box. You can also feel free. I will actually type my email as well into the chat box. I am more than happy to answer any questions if you're a little concerned about your little one's skills or just needing some reassurance or some clarification on anything we talked about today. Please feel free to email me. Otherwise, I will let Jan take over.
All right. Thank you, Ashlyn. That was awesome. It was so fun to hear all of the different skills and listening to all of those things. Thank you guys for everybody who got on with Zoom tonight and also on Facebook Live. We had a lot of people pop in and watch there as well. I did want to let you know that our next training will be on sign language. It'll be on basic sign language, signs that you can use during the day, during daily routines and different activities with your children. And that one will be in November. So we hope that you join us then. And if there's no questions, we'll let you guys all go ahead and log off. And thank you again for attending.